Shalom. Thanks for joining me. You know, um, there are times when I think about, well, a lot of times when I think about all the things to be grateful for and some of the things we really take for granted. For instance, our indoor plumbing. Okay. So, I was just thinking about some of the experiences that I've had over time. And if we do, we take, for instance, if for granted that we inside the house, we go to another room in the house where the heat is still on in all the rooms and air conditioning is there, and we can bathe and in luxury. All right, but I'm gonna tell you, it's not that way everywhere, nor has it always been. And I know you know that, but I'm gonna tell you some of my experiences over time. I do remember, now this was in the 90s. I went to an arranged marriage of a friend of mine, her daughter, no, her sister had an arranged marriage. They were from the country of India. And at the time I was in Pittsburgh and there was an arranged marriage. And I went to the ceremony. And afterwards, I got a chance to speak to a lot of particularly the Indian women. And I asked them, were they planning to go back to India? And they said, oh no, a lot of times their husbands had um, very good jobs as engineers or people at universities or whatever, but they liked all the luxury that was here in the United States. But I'm gonna tell you, I was born in 1948, and when we traveled as a family, we did a lot of traveling. Either my immediate nuclear family with my sister and mom. And I don't remember so much with my dad because my mom and dad were married and they got divorced and then they remarried. Okay. So, but in the meantime, they had married other people and got divorced from those people and then remarried. Nobody was following through. Okay. So on some of those road trips we would do in the 1950s, I know sometimes my grandmother would go with me. Not often my grandfather. My grandfather always said something like, somebody got to stay here with this house. Okay. He just didn't like to leave the house with nobody there for any length of time. But when we had to use a restroom, um, being black, we couldn't just stop anywhere, And so I remember stopping along the road where there was country roads or tree line roads, and not in the city, okay? But we were in the outskirts of town on roads, and a lot of times, a lot of these big highways hadn't been built as yet. And we would get out and get behind a tree and do what we had to do. And I can remember just hoping that no bug was going to bite me on my behind, okay? I don't even think I was thinking about snakes because I'd be thinking about snakes now. But, and fast forward up to the early 2000s when I had children. Um, and it wasn't because we couldn't stop and go to the restroom anywhere. It's that we didn't like to have to stop and get everybody out and go to the restroom, everybody come back. We would carry a potty chair in the car, in the van with us. And so we had a van that seated three, six, about eight people in the middle row. We would um, stow those seats and we'd have a potty chair there. And so it was real convenient for everybody. But I can remember, now I live in South Carolina now, and my grandmother is from South Carolina, my dad's mom. And I remember that she brought us here once to visit relatives, and I'm thinking it was her sister Bertha. And I'm glad this is not the genealogical program because I'd have to get accurate some of these dates, okay, but I'm giving you kind of roundabout. But I believe it was in the 90s. And she had a pump at her sink where she had to, pump the water into the house. And if we went to the bathroom, we'd have to pump the water and take it into the bathroom to flush the toilet. I mean, so this was 90s in South Carolina. We've come a long way. I remember um, in 2000, we moved further south in Michigan from up in Detroit. And no, we were in Dundee in Michigan, but we were steadily moving south. And we bought a house that was it was a little bit more than 2,900 square feet. People there locally had said that it used to be I think I had read this when I went to the county museum or something like that and was looking up information about this house because I knew it was historical. The people in town knew the Meyerholtz, it was Meyerholtz Road that we were on, had owned that house, and many of the people there, several of the people that I had talked to in town, had worked for the Meyerholtz. Either they worked in the field or they worked in the house. And it was a 6-bedroom house with 1.5 baths. I wonder why in the world would you only have 1.5 baths? Because there were 5 bedrooms on the top floor and only a half bath there. And downstairs there was a full bath in a bedroom. But it wasn't a problem for us because it was only 4 of us. And Floyd was still working at the time, and he worked the shift like 8:30 to 3:30 in Trenton, Michigan, and it took him about an hour and 20 minutes to get to work. So when he got up to leave, he didn't have any competition getting into the bathroom at that time, and neither did he have when he came home because I was homeschooling the children, so I would always make sure by the time that he got home, it could be like 6, 7 o'clock, and especially if they were working overtime, it could even be later. A lot of times the children were in bed, and as a matter of fact, Winston said to me one day, he said, Mama, why don't Daddy like us? So I said, what do you mean? And he said, because he don't live here with us. And the thing about it was that they would see Floyd on the weekends when he didn't have to work, if he didn't have, shift what he was working. But they wouldn't see him when they got up in the morning. He was gone, and when he went to bed, he was gone. So I tried to explain to him that his hours of working, and what we did is that I would keep the children up at night so at least they would see Floyd coming home. But anyway, so I do remember in 2008 when I bought a home in Alabama. It was 5 acres and it was 2 houses. One was a main house, and the other was what they call there a camp house. In the camp house, uh, they would rent it out seasonally for people who wanted to hunt. Okay. And when I got ready to leave Alabama, I had a neighbor come and help me kind of clean out everything. And once we started cutting back some of the bush, no, this is when I first got there. Sorry about that. When I first got there, I had somebody help me clean out the bush. And what did we discover? It was a 2-seater outhouse. It was back in the bush, but it had completely been covered over with all kind of growth and stuff. And at that point, it was just the armadillos that was living in it. Now, in Alabama, that they say they brought in a lot of armadillos because the armadillos aren't native to Alabama. They could be now, but there were so many snakes in Alabama, they brought in armadillos. And we would see them occasionally on the property. They would just kind of saunter along, and nobody was going to, bother them because we figured they were doing us a favor by getting up the snakes. But anyway, when I got ready to leave there, a neighbor, when I told him about it, he just really wanted it, so he came and he lifted up and took it to his property. So now I'm going to go back to the 1990s. I was working for a research company out of Ann Arbor, Michigan, and we had a contract with Junior Achievement Program. And Junior Achievement is generally in the middle schools and the high schools, and it's to teach children how to set up and operate their own businesses. And we had 2 contracts. One was in an African country and one was in Russia. And we had I was sent to the one in the African country, and somebody else from our um, company was sent to Russia. And the person, before I went to Africa, the guy who was in charge of the Junior Achievement Program there came to the United States to talk to us about it and whatever. And as a matter of fact, he stayed with Floyd and I because the guy who owned the corporation wanted my husband to be comfortable with me going to a foreign country and to whatever. And Floyd was just fine with it. But anyway, he stayed with us, so I got to know him. His name was Paul. So when I went there, our base was in a metropolitan city that was there, and so I stayed in a very nice hotel that had a restaurant downstairs. But daily, we would go to these rural outskirts, and I would do interviews with the headmaster or the headmistress, and would talk with some of the students about the Junior Achievement Program. Some of the things that they would do, some were raising bees, some were having projects where they would manufacture like little notebooks, would produce notebooks, or they would buy orange juice containers and sell them at a profit. But they were doing these kinds of things because where they lived in this rural outskirts, there weren't like factories and things like that, or and if they didn't go to college, they would need some way of being able to take care of themselves. And so it was quite a successful program over there. The children seemed to be quite excited about it, and they were operating their own businesses. Now, when Paul, he was really forward thinking about how comfortable I would be in that country and not having another American around. So he got in touch with a Peace Corps worker, and I forget his name, but he was quite friendly and showed me a lot and helped me a lot while I was over there. He did a lot of the traveling with us too, and he also, I don't think he stayed. I'm not sure if he stayed in the same hotel with us during the time that I was there, but I'm pretty sure he would have loved it if he did. And of course, not of course, but when I went over there, I had two suitcases. One was full of my clothes, and the other was full of what I figured I needed to be able to survive over there: peanut butter crackers, chewing gum, juices, and packs and stuff like that. And when I showed the Peace Corps worker and stuff, his eyes got big, and so I shared with him too. So we was fast friends. Okay. So one time we were going to a really back country, and there was a what we would call, it was set up sort of like a motel, okay, but it was all on one floor, and everything was all in one building. So I'm not sure what you would. What motels here have separate entrances, but this you go into one entrance, and they had a where they would prepare food for you, so a big dining hall, and then they had these separate rooms all in the same building, and then there was a shower place in the back. So when I first got there, and we were riding around, Paul was driving us in a Mercedes, but it had no air conditioning. Okay. So, and the temperatures there, I think the lowest might have been like 95 degrees. So when we got there, I wanted to take a shower to freshen up. So I go back into the shower room or whatever, the shower stall, and I'm turning all these knobs and everything, and I can't get anything to work. So I go get Paul. I said, hey, I said, not the Peace Corps worker. I said, nothing back there is working. Can you show me how to flip the switches on for the shower? He looked at me and said, Sharon, they don't have running water here. I said, no running water. He said, but I'll get somebody to bring you some water. Okay. So I'm hot, a little bit homesick. And with the room that I was in, when I went to go into the room, the Peace Corps worker snatched me back before I go into the room. He says, you can't go in there yet. And he went and he sprayed in there some kind of insecticide or something. He said, you wait 15, 20 minutes before you go in. And when I went back in that room, it was all kind of critters and stuff and just dropped dead to the floor. Okay. So I had to get that cleaned out to be able to be in the bed and stuff like that. So there was a young boy, he was preteen or whatever. He brought me a bucket of water, and he sat it into the shower stall, and then he set a little margarine cup right next to it. So when I walked back in there, and so I'm looking, and I'm trying to figure out, like what you do, okay? So I finally figured out you kind of soak up with the water and you take that margarine cup and you just rinse yourself and douse you. Now I ain't gonna tell you what I was saying, but I was saying something every time I doused myself. And I remember um, getting back to our base when we got back into metropolitan city. I was so glad. And there I had a phone where I could actually call Floyd, and I was telling him about my adventures. And I was expecting Floyd to say something, very encouraging and whatever. But you know what Floyd said? He said, Sharon, I am so glad I didn't go with you. Because I had tried to convince him to come with me, but Floyd wasn't particular. Floyd didn't particularly care for flying, and I was going to have to fly from Pittsburgh to New York, New York to Amsterdam, and then Amsterdam over to Africa, and that just he wasn't going to do that. But anyway, so the luxuries that we have now I still live in South Carolina, and I've got a 4-bedroom home with 2 baths. And I'm thankful when I walk in there. It's warm in there, and I do appreciate the convenience. And in some aspects, it's luxury. So I remember talking to my son the other day, and he was kind of, the phrase he said, down in the mouth by something. I said, well, he said, you know what? You better think about things that you need to be thankful for being blessed. I said, because there's a whole lot of things could be worse situation than what you in at the moment. And I started naming some things, and I even went to far as like you could be missing a limb, or something, And so I told him, I said, you remember when you were younger and at home, and oftentimes when we would have prayer time, what I would say is, let's go around the table and everybody's going to say 5 things that they're thankful for. I said, you start thinking about those 5 things. And so to my listener friends out there, um, praise Father in times where things might not be going the way that you anticipated they should go. And praise Father when you are bored and really wish you had something to do. Praise Father when things are really tight. Praise Father all the time. And think of 5 things that you could be thankful for. And I'm going to tell you 5 things that we all can be thankful for, because if we're praising Him, we got breath. All right. Most of the time, we got a shelter over our heads. You can thank Him for the health that you have. If it's the health that you don't want, but at least you got the health that you have in hopes of getting better health. Thank Him for the income that you have coming in. If you don't have income, thank Him for the hope of income and that you know that He is going to provide for you. You can thank Him for other things. Thank Him for your family, for your friends, for, whatever He has done in your life that you can be thankful for. So this is the end of this story, and I hope that you got a chuckle somewhere in it, and I hope that you are very, very thankful for all that Father has done for you, because I know I am. Shalom, and remember to like and share and subscribe if you haven't. Shalom.